The Spin-off Podcast Network.
Are you making the most of your KiwiSaver investment? Generate is an award-winning KiwiSaver provider with a track record of strong long-term performance. Making a smart decision now could add tens of thousands of dollars by the time you reach retirement. Book a no-obligation chat with a Generate KiwiSaver advisor today at generatekiwisaver.co.nz/get-advice. A copy of the product disclosure statement is available at generatekiwisaver.co.nz. The issuer of the scheme is Generate Investment Management Limited, and of course, past performance does not guarantee future returns.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
All right, let's clap on 4. Tahirua Toru. Fuck.
That we nailed that.
That was
Let
terrible.
me do it.
You do it. You do it.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
What? It's close enough. Tēnā koutou katoa, this is Gone By Lunchtime. We are back once again with the late night lockdown edition. It's also Sleep Week at the spin-off, so we're going to be doing the whole podcast in ASMR. Kia ora, Annabelle.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Ben.
Kia ora.
What you can't see, listeners, is Ben sort of arching his neck and staring at the computer like there's something crawling from another universe out of it and towards his face.
No, we're just doing some ASMR tingles.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
To aid sleep. After the audience is obviously on the edge of their seats from one of our famed lockdown podcasts, the greatest podcasts that we and perhaps anyone else have ever done.
Great point. That's a very good point. I
accidentally had a nana nap today.
Yeah.
And it was like my husband was on a Zoom and I accidentally fell asleep watching the kids. And then I woke up panicked, and of course they had gone and invaded his office and run riot. But the worst thing of all was that everyone in the whole house had taken photos of me sleeping, including him and the 21-year-old. So I'm being sleep shamed.
Did they make it their Zoom backgrounds?
Oh, no. That'd be terrifying.
It's absolutely our goal in this podcast to put you to sleep. We feel as though, as New Zealand's leading politics podcast, the team of 5 million is going through a lot again, and our role is we're very much like the nanny of the team of 5 million, aren't we? When we're going to soothe you to sleep with a lullaby for the team of 5 million. So, if nothing else, we hope that from this conversation you find something that can send you into slumber. Thanks to Te Ai here for staying up late into the night and making this work technically, as is now tradition with a late night lockdown Gone By Lunchtime. We spent quite a long time trying to get this far, and who knows if it will come out the other end audible. Thanks also to members for making it all possible. No thanks to non-members, apart from the ones who can't afford to be members. You're freeloaders. And hello to the big boys of Brexit. It's nearly 9 o'clock on Wednesday, August 18. So we're coming up to 24 hours in level 4 lockdown across the country. And, it's only fair that we tackle the big question, which is, of course, how is Ben going? How are you going, Ben? Have you drunk your body weight in Mountain Dew yet? Have you taken to the Zorb?
I hate
You've been arrested with Billy TK?
It's an affront to, it's an affront to my existence as a free man in New Zealand. Every lockdown costs me quite a lot of money because I am self-employed. And yeah, I'm mad as hell. I finished watching White Lotus. I've got no TV backed up. You know, this
That's the only
this could
TV
not have come at a worse time.
There's no TV.
I powered through both seasons of Succession so that I'll be caught up for season 3, and then we have a lockdown. #thanks, Jacinda.
Ben, I watched a really great Bee Gees documentary the other night, so that should tide you over, and that sparked a massive Bee Gees obsession. I've listened to How Deep Is Your Love literally about 50 times in the last 48 hours, so that might help tide you over.
I remember watching a Bee Gees documentary when I was in high school, and I was like, these guys are lame. These are, this is the era of grunge, man. Fuck disco. And I think they were talking to Morris. Is he the cool one? And,
yeah, Mo. And that's what we call him, his friends, we call him Mo.
And he was like, I remember the first day I had a panic attack. My heart started beating. I was catatonic. I was sweating. I didn't know what was happening. So I drank a bottle of vodka, and that seemed to calm me down. So I thought, I know what to do if that happens again. And it's like... So after that, I kind of liked the Bee Gees, and I think back to that in trying times like this, our lockdown existence,
These are very helpful, calming, soothing balm for the team of 5 million. And about how things been for you otherwise, apart from being humiliated by your family.
Not just by my family, but also by Simon Bridges.
Oh yes, that was I heard about that.
Did he write it in the inscription in your book, Toby? In his personalised message to you? Is that how you found out?
Found out about Annabelle being snubbed.
About
did he write
me not write books?
We should just explain that Simon Bridges has written a book, and he's sent the book to important New Zealanders. And he didn't send the book to Ben Thomas or to Annabelle Lee Mather, or at least it got stuck in the post somewhere.
No, he, because I tweeted him, and he was like, no, I've got to sell some books. I was like, bro, that cuts me deep. The thing too is I've always thought of me and Simon, we're like voice twins. We sound like we were raised in the same household. And I interviewed him all the way back in 2011 for Native Affairs, and all of Twitter is getting these beautifully inscribed books from Simon. I basically turned Baby Yak into a celebrity last year, and nothing.
Nothing for you either, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I loudly called for his resignation, and I think that led to his toppling by what according to reports he calls in his book the bedwetters winning.
I think he was pretty unhappy about a lot of that.
I don't know if that's fair, but I reckon. Do you reckon Todd Muller I reckon he leaked a little bit when Judith confronted him in caucus. I reckon he probably let a little bit out.
Maybe just a little bit out.
Just a little bit of a stress.
I think probably my expectations were quite high too, because last year Simon gave me a kiwi fruit. And I thought that was a real tohu of our bond.
Well, no one else has got a kiwi fruit as far as I'm aware, and they're probably...
It was a golden kiwi fruit too, so it wasn't just your ordinary kiwi fruit. It was like bougie kiwi fruit.
Sorry, it's not
think about it.
It's something that costs a month.
Right now, as people face several years in lockdown, what they would really want, rather than a book full of pithy anecdotes, is a lovely golden kiwi fruit.
Indeed.
So it's actually quite a good book. First quarter of it especially. It's got quite a lot of spin-off content in it, actually. Spin-off is quoted more extensively than any other media outlet, I think.
Am I in it? I said some pretty mean things about him.
I don't think so.
Yeah, harsh.
We should probably talk about what's going on. Yesterday about 2 something or other, maybe shortly before 2:30, the release came out from the Ministry of Health, which was in its kind of characteristic sober style, reasonably buried lead. Or at least, they sort of played it down a bit, but we had a community case in Auckland. And then the Prime Minister, who'd been in Auckland, flew back down to Wellington. And in a pattern I suppose we're becoming, sadly, a bit familiar with, there was the press conference, there was the announcement that we're going, but this time to level 4 for the first time in, almost a year and a half, I guess. And the decision was that Auckland and the Coromandel Peninsula would be going into level 4 lockdown for a week and the rest of the country for 3 days. Since then, we've had another 9 cases, confirmed. The last 3 that came the last few hours. One of them hopefully being good news because it is a woman, I think, at the age of 60 who they haven't linked to the existing group yet, but she does have a link to the border. So touch wood, if they can join up the bit between her and the border and then to the group that we've got already, that cluster, then it may not be too devastating. But I suppose everybody has seen this afternoon that big list of places of interest, which includes what looked like having a good time in Auckland. Most exciting night out since that person spent all that time in the Korean chicken restaurant in the North Shore.
Gen Z is hectic, eh?
Yeah.
Even my 20-year-old self was impressed.
Yeah.
I was like, even in my prime, I don't know if I would have hit that many spots.
Bar 101.
And then had the audacity to go to
Denny's.
church afterwards.
I don't know if we know that's the same person, but it's terrible because we shouldn't places of interest shame people. We shouldn't, we shouldn't scan shame people, but it is impossible not to put together in your head this kind of digital diary and imagine, wow, what a bender. Yeah. That looks amazing.
If it was my COVID tracker, it would be like every hoko secondhand hospice shop between Point Chevalier and Henderson. So when I see like all of those nightclubs, I have so much respect and awe for those people.
Maybe you should, because you can manually enter things now. If you got just sort of manually enter some cool things to make it sort of seem like
that's such
you're
a good idea.
I don't think that's a good idea. This is not public health advice. Please don't do that. Ben, yours would just be Northern Club, wouldn't it? All day, all night.
the cigar room.
I try and do things like Unity Bookshop and Auckland Art Gallery and like
Love
sophisticated
it.
basement theatre.
One of the things that is notable, I suppose, about the decision that was made is that, is it fair to say there was nothing, no, it was inevitable? No one was really surprised, were they? I mean, I guess partly because of what we've seen across the Tasman, what we've seen happen in New South Wales especially, means that I don't think there were many groups, whether it was business groups or that even the National Party, perhaps with the exception of David Seymour, no one really argued about the decision. They might have argued about whether or not we had been fully advanced as advanced as we might have been in the vaccine rollout, but no one really argued with the decision.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like you say, I think there's been a sense of inevitability about it, and just over the last couple of weeks, I've heard more and more people planning for it. And on Monday, I was actually at a whakatau in a shared office space, and I could overhear one of the other officers talking about their level 4 plan. So I think, all of us were kind of in a mindset that it was a when, not a if. And, with Delta, I think everyone knew that we were going to be going straight to level 4.
Yeah, and that was pretty good. It was pretty good of Chris Hipkins to, and Ardern to really flag that in advance. I think it was was it a week or 2 weeks ago that they were talking about that. So, saying if we get Delta, it'll be straight to level 4. And that was probably necessary because, you know, after last year and after the beginning of this year, when people were a bit jaded by the whole thing, you know, there really was a kind of feeling that the government would be going out of its way to avoid future lockdowns. So, you know, in that sense, they've been keeping people primed, they've been keeping people informed. Yeah, but on the other hand, you know, you sort of think, well, if level 4 was seen as an inevitability, and if Delta, you know, in the community at some point was seen as an inevitability, you know, why were they still figuring out whether vaccinations could take place today? Why did Grant Robertson, I think he told News Talk ZB, they're still working on the classification of certain businesses as essential services or not? I mean, this, you know, should have all been sorted by now.
I mean, I think some of the MB stuff is the details around the edges. I think it's a fair point that it should be nailed down, but it doesn't seem to be like it was the first time round, where whole kind of sectors were asking for clarification. I think it's more the details, and certainly we saw in New South Wales how there were massive ambiguities in the system. But yeah, I mean, you did right. It was absolutely flagged. One of the places it was flagged was at that the Reconnecting with the World Summit that was held last week, in which we were going to talk about anyway. But it was kind of reconnecting with the world, but not like this. Yeah. And one of the parts of that I thought was I was sort of, after the Skegg report, which preceded it, came out, I think a lot of us were expecting a lot of not so much nebulous, but very non-specific, non-calendarized ambitions. But in fact, it was more aggressive, I think, than many of us expected, including introducing in the last quarter of this year a pilot scheme for allowing returning workers to do self-isolation in their own homes while meeting a whole range of criteria. But I just wonder whether after what's happening now, and we don't know how long it's going to last or exactly how it's going to end, I just don't. I have a hunch that people aren't going to go for that, you know.
Yeah, I think that's something that they will walk back pretty quickly at this stage. You know, that was something that I think David Skegg was very clear that was something that the government approached the expert advisory group with, rather than the other way around. And that would be, you know, as a recognition, you know, for those business groups who are getting a bit antsy, because as we know, absolutely impossible to book MIQ in peak times. You know, sort of private bot scalping operation going on there. But you know, without the you know, the security of high levels of vaccination. You know, you're really asking a lot for the sort of people who spend a lot of time in the Koru lounge to, you know, to be trusted with self-isolation, not having anyone around, not even being close to their own families who are in the same house as them. You know, it's the sort of thing that's probably not actually going to happen.
What do you reckon, Annabelle? How do you think the mood is? Do you think this is going to change the general mood in terms of even appetite for reopening with Australia? You know, in theory, and sometime in the coming weeks, that will be reconsidered. Obviously, that's going to be bumped back. I wonder whether the Trans-Tasman bubble will be open. I don't see it happening this year, put it that way.
Interesting. I just from what I've observed on Facebook and Twitter over the last 24 hours, it seems like people are becoming more entrenched on their side of this issue. So I've noticed that the anti-vaxxers are becoming way more vocal and way more aggressive in their approach and their sort of radicalized belief that it's all a hoax. And then on the flip side, I think most reasonably minded people, who have been watching all the headlines pour in from Fiji, from Australia, what's happening in New South Wales, can see just how deadly Delta is, and that there is absolutely a lot less appetite for a trans-Tasman border. And to be honest, I don't think there was ever a huge appetite for a trans-Tasman bubble beforehand. It's more something that's been driven by business, and so I think there's a bit of an element of not "I told you so," but that's obviously added to the sense of inevitability about it, is when you see how bad things are over there and the amount of deaths, teenagers, young people dying of Delta. It's, Fortress New Zealand starts to look like a really wonderful thing.
It's interesting you mentioned the anti-vax stuff. I saw some people today pointing to, because of course one of the cases is a nurse at Auckland Hospital who's had both doses, but had, as the research has shown and does happen, she became positive with COVID despite having both those doses, and it's possible that it's one of those dangers that it becomes kind of part of the ammunition on the anti-vaxxer side. On the other side of that, hopefully, one silver lining out of this, really, we're joking about it, but it's a pretty horrible thing to happen, this lockdown, is that it will push some people towards understanding that we really have to get vaccinated and we have to get the fuck on with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you'd hope that was the case, but I think if there was one bum note in the Prime Minister's address, I suppose, last night announcing the lockdown, it was this almost sort of fatalistic view about vaccinations, where, look at it, it is a tough thing to get across, saying, look, this person was fully vaccinated, but yes, they got the virus. Now, we know that if you are vaccinated and you do get the virus, your chances of having, serious adverse consequences are hugely reduced. I don't know the exact figures, but, by a factor of about 20 or something, right? And So there's no question about whether it's worthwhile getting the virus. But I think the Prime Minister...
The vaccine.
I think the Prime Minister... the vaccine, sorry. yeah, that's right. Still some argument about the virus, about the benefits of that. Let's just release a little bit on Waiheke Island, just a controlled study. But, yeah, and I think maybe the PM kind of didn't make the case particularly well there and said, we can't be relying on the vaccine. Maybe the vaccine won't be enough to allow us to reopen. And I don't know, in the we're still in the early stages of a national vaccine rollout, and I don't know if that was the right messaging to give. Our problem is not actually widespread vaccine skepticism or anti-vaxxing. It's a lot of hesitancy in the community. A lot of people going, well, I don't think it's a government plot, but, why should I get it? All else being equal. And I do worry that the government hasn't really put the same sort of focus and also level of resources into it that I thought they would, which is to say equal to the kind of marketing campaign they did for the lockdown and for uniting against COVID-19 in the early stages last year.
You see, I don't even know if that's true. I mean, I certainly think it's less visible, but I don't know. I honestly haven't a clue what the numbers tell you, but I feel like it's just that everyone was paying attention then, So whereas now it seems like there's quite a lot of publicity being pumped out, but there's just much more around and people are less focused on it. And I think that's the case with the contact tracer app as well.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Ben. When we conducted our poll at the start of the year on the Māori participation in the vaccination program, there was reasonably high levels of hesitancy, but it wasn't poo in the ground stuff. It was, I'm a little bit worried. I need more information, and the vast majority of Māori cited their GP as their primary source of information. They specifically said they didn't care what iwi leaders had to say. They didn't care what social media influencers had to say. They didn't care what All Blacks or sports figures or anything like that wanted, what they had to say. They wanted good information from their GPs, and I'm not sure how well that's been executed within Māori communities, because, the vaccine rates among Māori are really lagging behind where I would have hoped or expected them to be by now. And I just wonder if they have the right delivery mechanisms for providing that sort of information and assurance that a lot of Māori communities need.
I reckon that's a really good point, and we've heard, a few weeks ago we were hearing from the GPs nationally saying that they hadn't been looped in. It was all being done through the district health boards and not through, the GPs. I don't know if you can get vaccines at your GP right now. And that is most people's, particularly rural people, particularly people outside the cities. That's the doctor, right? That's the guy who knows about your family and your medical history, and the guy that he's as Shane Retty would say, the guy who's delivered your babies, mixed in sweat, and I just worried. Look, I got into a bit of strife, I think, on social media the other week for gently echoing Judith Collins' concerns about Ashley Bloomfield. But the reality is that, I think the people, the people who have put us in this good position, as far as the pandemic goes, are actually Cabinet and the politicians. And it's been political calls, in terms of lockdowns, in terms of community buy-in, that have actually got us to the point that we're in now, and the sorts of the times that we've been relying on bureaucrats, things have not gone as smoothly, and we can think about, testing at the border. We can think about still unavailable saliva testing, all these things that are meant to have happened but just haven't. And I think that the vaccine rollout is unfortunately logistically, in that latter camp.
I mean, I think, actually National have had a bit of a bad rap for some of the COVID response. Judith Collins' comments about Ashley Bloomfield were very politically foolish, clearly, going on to Magic Talk and, denouncing a leading and beloved public servant is just not smart.
The nation's love actually boyfriend. Yeah, you can't.
But going all the way back to your close personal friend Simon Bridges, Ben and Annabelle, a lot of if you look back at the comment, he's widely thought of as having messed up the COVID response, and I think in parts he did, and I think that was probably tonal. But there is a real pattern throughout of suggestions being made, criticisms being lodged that have been followed through in months to come after being dismissed. And, that's kind of maybe one of the reasons that our response has been pretty successful. There has been that pushback from both media and from opposition, whether it's on saliva testing, whether it's on testing at the border, pre-departure testing, all those things. And one of the things, to your point, Ben, that Brian Roche, one of the other kind of mandarins, I suppose, that's probably the wrong word, you know what I mean, senior kind of doyens of advisory groups, recommended. He's chairing a sort of another COVID response group at the moment. He said last week that he thought a separate agency or department or whatever to deal with the COVID response was important because health overseeing it was never really the ideal long-term answer. They weren't built to deal with this incredible multifaceted response that extends way beyond just providing the health services.
Yeah, that's right. And look, remember the Ministry of Health, it's easy to criticise them and fun to do, but they are actually a policy ministry. They're not a delivery or a logistics or an operational ministry or department. They never have been. And so it was always a bit of a category error to have them in charge of, the number of people turning up to hotel rooms to test guests on day 7. It's not what they're good at. And, this, of course, is the one worry that we have in terms of Andrew Little's plans to centralise all of the DHBs into this, new New Zealand Health or Health New Zealand agency is, if you actually just make it a sort of subsidiary of MOH, it'll probably be, could be even worse, than the status quo. But yeah, this, I think National talked about a separate border agency during the election. Roche is talking more about, the overall response, so functions that are currently, Ministry of Health, Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, and, the armies or the Defence Force spread across like a number of areas. And, if you recall, I think Thomas Coughlin from, he was with Stuff then, now with the New Zealand Herald, actually did a wiring diagram of the sort of accountabilities and responsibilities between agencies on the border and MIQ. And, it was frankly bewildering. It looked like, a sort of Russian tax evasion scheme through the Cayman Islands. It was one of these impossible to sort of trace things.
Annabelle?
I just didn't realise that's how you pronounce his name.
Coughlin.
So thanks for that.
I don't know if it is.
Coughlin.
It might be Coughlin. I'm not sure.
He's starting a podcast. We'll have to listen to his podcast to find out. I'm Toby Manhire, and this is Juggernaut, the story of the Fourth Labour Government, a podcast in 6 parts.
Doesn't give my opponents much time to run up to an election, does it?
This nation is at risk.
What do you think you're up to now, you perverted little liar?
I could smell the uranium on it as you lean towards it.
There's a radical overhaul in the history of New Zealand's administration.
Juggernaut, the story of the Fourth Labour Government, made with the support of New Zealand On Air. Listen now on The Spin-Off or wherever you get your podcasts.
Are you curious about how business can be better? I'm Simon Pound, and I host Business is Boring, a podcast where I kōrero with some of the most interesting people in entrepreneurship, commerce, and making things happen. Tune in to Business is Boring every Tuesday, brought to you by the Spin-Off Podcast Network in partnership with Spark Business Lab.
Obviously we can't really avoid talking about what we've all been watching in horror going on in Afghanistan, with the Americans leaving and lots of Western countries trying to evacuate their people as the Taliban basically sweep in across an Afghan army that just basically seemed to let them through into the Kandahar, into Bamiyan, into Kabul. Annabelle, did you watch all that?
I haven't watched it so much, but I've been reading about it and really feeling for the wahine over there, and what a terrifying time it must be for them, and also thinking about the whānau of our New Zealand troops who died in Afghanistan, people like Doug Hughes, and thinking just what an absolute waste of time and energy and life that was. And, obviously we shouldn't have been there in the first place. So while it's come as a shock to many, I don't think it probably should.
And now we've deployed a Hercules, which won't go to Afghanistan, I don't think.
Tomorrow, as we speak, tomorrow it's taking off. So hopefully they're going straight there. I don't know if they're taking there doesn't seem to be a lot of urgency on it.
I mean, I guess they'll probably go to somewhere like the UAE and just work as part of a chain that is hopefully lifting out citizens, but also, really importantly, translators and other Afghan nationals who worked for the NZDF and for other forces, and whose lives are at serious risk. It's a very grim scene altogether.
To be fair, I imagine it's not the sort of thing where you can just send a plane off ASAP. Like, given, I mean, there'd be heaps of countries in there trying to get their people out, and literally trying to get time on the tarmac and all of that sort of stuff would be a bit of a logistics nightmare, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of spoken to people who, work in NGOs, and they say, we were preparing to get our people out, 2 months ago, a month ago. I don't believe that as a Five Eyes nation we were worse briefed than, charitable organisations. And when you look at the sort of, the framework that the government has blamed for rejecting Afghan nationals who applied, I think, as late as sort of June or July to come back over here when, the writing was very much on the wall. You sort of, it's really hard to grapple with sort of, even if we ignore that 20 million people roughly have just been sort of handed over to live in hell, basically, from now on. Even if you ignore that and just think about the individuals who helped the New Zealand forces, who were employed by our guys, who kept them safe, the sort of the lack of concern for them really is jarring. Like you say, it's not easy to extricate anyone right now. If you look at the chaos that's happening at those airports, I've heard about, people who had flights out and they could not physically get to and on the planes where they had a place reserved because of the violence, because of the mobs, because of the crowds.
Planes leaving with like 7 passengers on board because people can't even get to the airport, eh? Yeah,
and then conversely, planes that have just sort of loaded as many people as they can on sort of
700 people on an aircraft for 300 people clinging to the airplanes. Yes, it's all dreadful. Well, I mean, it's hard to.
It's a sad one. There's no happy ending and there's no hope sort of at the end of it. And all that we can hope is that that perhaps the Taliban let people leave, if they, ideally they don't want non-believers there or whatever, and that, I think in the late 70s, with people fleeing Indochina, I think Canada and the United States resettled about 2 million people, and, you would hope that the countries of the West sort of try and match that effort, if that's possible.
Especially ones like us that sent troops in there. We've got a massive responsibility to open our doors to not just to the people that helped us, but to any wahine and their whānau that are wanting to escape.
Yeah, totally agree. Just spend a tiny fraction of the money that's been spent on military hardware in Afghanistan over the last 2 decades on resettling people from Afghanistan would be a decent idea. Look, it's getting late, so we should wind this up. I was going to talk a bit about Winston Peters, who's back, and we know this because he spent 2 press releases in the last week. One of which he sent out, I don't know if you guys saw this, he sent out a press release at about 3:00 on Tuesday after everyone was absolutely doom scrolling, and later maybe 4:00, and he apparently was blissfully unaware of the fact that there was a community case and everyone was freaking out.
He was jumping in to defend the honour of Troy Balker.
That's right. That's right. Oh, you didn't even talk about Troy Balker. Oh dear.
It was. I wondered. We've been told that Shane Jones, is not really involved with the party, or is unlikely to kind of come back on board with them. But there was some florid language in that press release that I don't know if it wasn't Jones. I don't know where that came from.
Are you saying that Matua Winston can't come up with some florid language? It's the difference between a Merlot and a Burgundy. Are they different wines? I don't even really know. Annabelle, have you got anything to leave us with?
I was going to sing Loyal or something, or maybe some Bee Gees.
Yeah. Do you want to take us out in some Bee Gees? If you're waking up and unsure, what's happened is you've left your podcast running. This is still Gone By Lunchtime. We're now in the 7th hour of this late night lockdown lunchtime special, and we hope you enjoyed your nap. Just put it on again and fall off to sleep. Here's Annabelle Lee Mather.
I know your eyes in the morning sun. Ben?
I don't know any of the lyrics. I just know the thing about the drinking vodka and everything.
Christ.
Just end it.
Just get rid of it.
Just make it stop.
Get it over.
Stop.
Talo for Lover. I'm Madeline Chapman, editor at The Spinoff. If you have the means, consider supporting our high-quality journalism by becoming a Spinoff member. Sign up now at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
Kia ora, I'm Alex Casey, senior writer at The Spinoff. We wouldn't exist without the ongoing support of our generous members. If you're able to, you can make a donation at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
The Spinoff Podcast Network.